Welcome everyone to Just Onside. I am your host Ahmed Badja Baghdadi, and I am joined by the man who's the master of the final word and the last take, Uwais Ahmed. And some call this man Nostradamus. We call him Ayub Patel. How are we doing, gentlemen?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's been a good week. Happy it's a Friday evening. But yeah, looking forward to the show.
Same here. All good. Until the weekend.
Until the weekend, of course. But don't worry, we won't have to talk about the weekend yet. We will talk about why I called you Nostradamus, and I believe Uwais gave you that name. Manchester City dismantling Real Madrid midweek to reach the Champions League final. Dominant performance. They were the better team by far. Real may have put up a fight had they come out with a different lineup. This is all hindsight speaking. In the end, Man City deserved winners through to the Champions League final, looking like they're going to be treble winners unless someone does anything about it, Inter Milan or Manchester United. So, guys, I just want your thoughts on Manchester City's performance. Were you expecting that kind of a drubbing? And are they going to go all the way?
I'll let you go
Who's going
first. You?
first? All right. Well, I suppose as Nostradamus, it was always going to happen, wasn't it? Because I said that Manchester City will win the Champions League, which means that obviously they were going to beat Real Madrid. After the first game, I mean, that was the best game of football I've watched for a long, long time. The second game was just a masterclass. I mean, that was two of the best club sides in world football. You talked about the lineup. Maybe I suppose perhaps the lineup would have had a slight difference in terms of the results, but I don't think so. I think City was just absolutely unbelievable. That was to me an unbelievable performance, exceptional. Everything that you could get right in a football game, Pep got it right. The players were up for the game. They were chomping at the bit. It was 8, 9s, 10s out of 10 performances by Manchester City. I was just so impressed. They gave Real Madrid the runaround. There were times in the game that Real Madrid looked like a championship side. There were misplaced passes. They were really looked panicky. I was so impressed. There is no question in my mind. I mean, I said it before. Yaya Torres has lifted the curse, so I knew that they were going to win the Champions League. That performance, I mean, how could you not? I mean, that was a performance that you purr to. So for me, excellent performances by every single player. Pep got his tactics absolutely bang on. They're going to win the Champions League. No doubt in my mind.
Wow, I can't believe Ayub goes Real Madrid played like Leeds. But
Worse
Uwais,
than Leeds. We only got beat 2-1.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, Ayub's articulated that very well. It was probably City's best performance this season. I mean, they've put four past a number of opposition at the Etihad this season. Liverpool, Arsenal, just to name a few. But yeah, incredible performance. I did fancy it to be a little bit close, but it was quite evident from the first 5 to 10 minutes that there was a certain relentlessness from Manchester City in terms of the continuous attacks. It was just kind of wave after wave. They simply just did not let Real Madrid out. And there was a point where, I mean, I think it was Steve McManaman on color commentary was talking about how normally this is how Real Madrid, kind of set up in terms of 10, 15 minutes trying to perhaps just weather the storm. And there was a part of you, because of the respect that we have for Real Madrid, where you thought it probably is the case. They're probably just looking to take this to 0-0 first 15, 20 minutes and then build from there. But Manchester City, to their credit, absolutely dominant from minute 1 to minute 90. Thoroughly deserved the win. Could have been more. Haaland could have scored a few if it wasn't for Courtois' unbelievable saves and some other kind of scramble situations. Definitely, I think there was one in the second half where Gundogan went through and Carvajal came across. But yeah, dominant performance from Manchester City. It's one that it's a bit of a, how can I put it, not a landmark, but a kind of a fork in the road in terms of I think they'll feel incredibly confident now going into the final. They are playing the best football that they have in a long time. They are peaking at the absolute right. They don't look like dropping points, whether it's in the league, whether it'll take some stopping, like Badge mentioned, by Inter Milan, where they'll be strong favourites. Let's be clear. I think the FA Cup perhaps might be a little bit more. I think Manchester United have the tools to perhaps hurt them, but they'll start strong favourites in that game as well. But yeah, in terms of the performance in midweek, dominant, and I would have to agree with Ayub. I would be incredibly surprised if Inter Milan managed to, thwart them with this kind of initial Champions League that they've coveted for so long.
No, City's superb. Real Madrid, I think it's evident now that they need to start ushering in the young blood, especially in midfield. I think Modric may still be able to go, that's fine. But Kroos, I think, is slowing down a fair bit. He's still got quality on the ball. But I do believe that they need to start getting Tchouaméni and Camavinga especially back into midfield. It'll be interesting to see what they do now, because there's big names being linked with them right now. Mbappe, Bellingham, and Alphonso Davies, I believe, at left back. So that'll move Camavinga back into the centre. I think if they were to land signings like that, you're looking at Champions League again next season. They're juggernauts. They're juggernauts. I'm sure if Ancelotti would love another go at that game, because that lineup did not work for him, unfortunately. But you win some, you lose some. They've been dominant over the years. And the lineups have always worked out for him, to be fair to him. So it was City's night for sure. It seems like it's their Champions League. No disrespect to Inter Milan. A good side, well-disciplined side, but I just don't see how City get to the final and lose against Inter Milan. I just don't see how Pep would fumble that, nor the players. So I think it's a given at this point, unfortunately. I mean, stranger things have happened, don't get me wrong, and I would love for stranger things to happen, but they're not gonna slip up for me. No chance.
Go on. No, just finish. I was just about to say, it's more just a natural flow of their play.
Exactly.
It feels there was a lot of talk on the commentary about how Real Madrid weren't quite sure how to build attacks or how to get up the pitch, and a lot of teams have had this, by the way, at the Etihad this season, when City have hit this absolute peak form. But it's just the natural way in which they all interchange. This additional ball-playing defender into the midfield is really causing issues. And I think just from a tactical perspective, and I wouldn't say identify this, but it was evident from the very first game against West Ham of the season, when I saw that Haaland requires so much attention and so much kind of, let's say, you've got to keep your eyes on him. And this idea of he doesn't get many touches, and it's absolutely by design. He's stretching the field vertically. Both centre-backs are scared, so both centre-backs are simply kind of taking a couple of yards behind, making sure they don't leave him one-on-one with the centre-back. And all that's happening is he's stretching the field vertically on one side. The three centre-backs are controlling things on the kind of defensive third. And then you have this kind of just multiple overloads in the middle third. And they already knock it around for fun. And they've been doing that. That identity has been ingrained for quite some time. But I think the fact they've now got a marksman, an elite marksman, who doesn't want to get engaged and drop in like a Firmino would, or like a Jesus would, or other type strikers in their pomp. He simply looks to stretch them vertically. And defenders already drop in another 5 yards because they're worried about his pace. It just creates so much space in the middle of the park. And with that extra midfielder, a defender, whether it be Stones previously, or even a Kanji, like drifts into those areas, it's too many men. It's a simple game of numbers. So, I would be surprised if Inter Milan have a game plan that can knock City off their stride. They're just too comfortable right now, playing unbelievable football.
Yeah, I think all the pieces would have to fall into place perfectly. Like City would have to have the biggest off day of their lives, and Inter Milan would have to play the game of their lives basically to stand a chance. And it's not disrespect to them; it's just the manner in which the way City are playing right now. Oh, I don't see anyone beating them. I do not see anyone beating them. You touched on United now in the FA Cup final. I don't see United stopping them either. I think United would have to have a perfect day as well. United do have the tools. They have the pace in behind that can hurt them. But in order to hurt them, you've got to first be able to stop them as well. And I don't think we're going to stop them, personally. So I just don't see how they get stopped, to be
You hit
honest.
the nail on the head there, Baj, when you sort of said they've got to have an off day. No matter how well United play, Inter Milan play, City have to have an off day, because I think if both teams play at their best, there's only one winner, and that's got to be City. I mean, it was just incredible, because I still cannot believe. As I said, we'll never know. In terms of the team selection, in terms of the positioning, in the first game, it's not an issue. Obviously, there's some aging legs in the middle of the park, but in the first game, it wasn't an issue. It was a cracking game. But that second game, it just was. Every single player for City was on the top of their game. It was in terms of, I don't know about the tactics. It was just, I think always sort of touched upon it. It was just the fluidity of the movement of the Man City players. It's moving parts constantly. There's always an option, and maybe sometimes two or three options, and it was just wonderful to watch. And it very rarely, if ever, have I seen Real Madrid, a side packed with quality, looks so ordinary, so average. It was anybody who was at the Etihad, that was a privilege, and those who watching, it was a privilege as well. It was just magnificent.
You can go support them if you want.
I probably will do next season.
Wait, make your mind up. Newcastle or
I'll be
City?
a happy man. Would you believe? I mean, the thing is, I'll be laughing and smiling every single episode.
No. Good stuff. Good stuff. Any final thoughts on City before I move on to US?
No,
We know you love a final thought, so
no. Honestly, I think we probably slightly understate it in terms of its significance. That result, Real Madrid. Yeah, you're right. They'll come again. They always are. And to your point about Cruz, I mean, this is a standard they set, right? That they get to a semi-final, lose convincingly, but they'll see that as a massive disappointment. Of course, losing in the La Liga race to Barcelona. So they'll come again. Rumors of big names, but Manchester City, it finally feels like it's their time.
yep, it does. It does. Right, we're going to switch gears. We're going to switch gears in a big way. We're going to discuss a topic that's quite sensitive. It affects, I guess, footballers on a daily basis, given the nature of fandom now and social media. We're going to discuss player abuse. So basically, a good example of this would be Patrick Bamford for Leeds after what are you smirking for?
It's that name again, isn't it? It's that name. It's the name.
You can't escape it. You can't escape it. Patrick Bamford, he obviously missed the penalty in your last game that could have got you 3 points. He has since received a ton of abuse online. Some of it is vile in the sense that it's threatening his life, and people crossing lines and talking about his family, his life. So I just want, and he actually deactivated his social media because of this. What do you guys think about how easy and how frequent it is that players get abuse online without any kind of ramifications for fans? But is some of it justified, or is some of it and where do you draw the line, basically?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Lewis, I'll sort of go first on this. But the easy answer is it you can't condone it. It shouldn't happen. Simple. But there's a lot more to it than that. I mean, football doesn't sort of operate outside of society and what happens in the world, and that's the way that I've always looked at it. That we live, especially now, in a time where there is toxicity. There is polarization. Politicians polarize opinions. You're either with us, you're against us. So the media systematically create sensational headlines. So I think over the last 20, 25, 30 years, what's been cultivated is attitudes, anger, frustration. We talk. I don't know whether you remember Jeremy Kyle. These types of shows, it's clickbait now. So I don't think it's just happened. I think we live in a time now where people are prodded or poked, are almost sort of forced to have extreme opinions That's the climate that we operate in. So therefore, my answer is based on the society and the times that we live in. As I said, I'm not going to isolate it because you can't isolate football from the times that we live in. So based in that context, we have people, and just another point as well, in England, I'll add this, there's a reason why I'm going to say this. The average reading age of the UK adult population is, I'll ask the question to you guys. What do you think that is? The average adult reading age in the UK. So if you did a survey of everybody over 18, what do you think that would be in terms of the reading capacity of the adult population in England, a developed nation, a very prosperous nation, a nation which has education at quite a high importance?
10.
Bash?
You said 10.
That's what
He said,
Oasis said.
he said adult, right?
Yeah. So in
Why is
terms
he
of
10?
no, that's the no. If you did a survey of all the adults over 18 and you actually assess their reading capabilities, at what age would their capabilities be at? So
Okay.
yeah.
At 15.
Right. It's actually 9 years of age.
Oh my God.
Which then again, if you think of the masses, it's not a very educated population, or at least in terms of reading capacity, it's not very educated. So put that in the mix, and then you talk about,
You're attacking our
player
viewership
abuse.
here, you.
Yeah, well, no, ours is our 144 viewers, subscribers are different. It's the rest of them, because anybody with a great deal of intellect would follow this channel. Okay, so that's the framework that I'm going to answer this question. So, player abuse at the moment, it's one where, how do people express their concerns, their issues, their frustrations? If that's the type of people that we're dealing with, when they're angry, when they're frustrated, we live in an age of social media. So there's a forum now that they can express their concerns. And this is what's happening. So when Patrick Bamford misses chance after chance after chance, when he misses key opportunities, the population that exists, the people that follow Leeds United Football Club, if they're in that spectrum, what do you think the response is going to be? Not to worry, Patrick. It's okay. These things happen. This is what happens. If this is cultivated, it's not something which has just happened by chance. I blame the media. I blame politicians. I blame the powers that be. They are creating individuals that have extremes of emotion. It's like having a pit bull. If you've got a pit bull that you don't train well and then it bites the children, what do? Are you surprised? No, you're not. This is the situation that we're in. So for me, I'm not surprised. The vitriol that's spewed, do I think it's over the top? Absolutely. Do I think there is a justification for abusing Patrick Bamford? Maybe not abuse, but I certainly think if you're on £70,000 a week in the society that we live in, as I said, I'm answering the question based on the framework of where we're at and the time that we live in. If somebody's on £70,000 a week, on £3.5 million a year, if they are performing to a level which I consider unacceptable, I think fans that either follow the club or pay their entrance fees and go and watch the game, they are absolutely entitled. If it goes over the top, from my point of view, as long as it's not threatening, as long as it's not to a point where I suppose that there is a genuine sort of concern to perhaps health and safety. If somebody says, right, I'm going to kill you, bang, out of order. But I have absolutely no problem if somebody says, Patrick Bamford, you're a effing something. You're unbelievably shit. Stuff like that. I have no problem with that, because I think we live in an age where it's been created that this is what's going to happen. So therefore, if you're on social media, Patrick Bamford has decided to be on social media. He has to be aware that this is the time that we live in. People aren't rational. It's not an educated mass. The average reading age isn't 17, 18, 19, 20. It's 9. So therefore, he has to understand that if he's on social media, when he's performing superbly, he'll get lots of adulation, lots of praise. The flip side is, in the time that we live in, he's going to get a lot of abuse. My point of view personally is, I'm very much in Gary Lineker. He always says that he gets a lot of abuse. It's water off a duck's back. It comes with the territory. And that's my position at this moment in time, that if you are on social media as a professional athlete, you've got to accept that the lunatics, the uneducated masses that perhaps are in society, that have been cultivated by politicians, by the media, by powers that be, this is what has been created. So for me, I think I have no issue with abuse. If a professional athlete is not performing, he should expect criticism. There's maybe a line that shouldn't be crossed, but there's a danger that people will cross the line. If they cross the line, from my point of view, don't be on social media. Simple as that. I'm not going to just say, well, right, oh, that's bang out of order. Yes, it is. But the person who's got a social media account in this day and age has to have the responsibility that if they're on social media, this may happen. So my position is I don't necessarily condemn every form of abuse. I think sometimes as a professional athlete on a high salary, huge salary, you are putting yourself in a position where you are a performer. If you don't perform to the levels, remember, there are people that are working all week. They're spending their hard-earned cash. It's escapism for a lot of people. For a lot of people, I mean, I used a quote once by Bill Shankly that football, it's not a matter of life and death. It's more important than that. Football means a tremendous amount to a lot of people. Their weekends either are high or low based on the result. They invest so much of their emotion into the game. As a professional footballer, you should be aware that, right, that's the responsibility I have. If you perform, or at least if you try, you give it your best, on the whole, there's no abuse. Usually the abuse is for those who are incompetent, who are continually letting fans down. So my point of view, it's to a certain extent, football is a fair game. I don't mind abuse. Maybe perhaps occasionally fans will cross the line. On the whole, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, but I think got sorry.
No.
You
Go
can
ahead.
go,
Go
man.
ahead. Go ahead.
No. So I was just gonna say that footballers also work all week. Yeah, their jobs are something that all of us would want, but they're still humans at the end of the day. Um, and no matter how much money they earn, like I always see it's an easy answer to have that oh, if I was on 70,000 a week or if I was on 100,000 a week, I'd just wipe my tears away with those notes and this, that, the other. But you still get affected mentally because at the end of the day, money ain't the be all and end all.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't. I mean, just on that point, yes. I mean, you could probably sort of say it isn't the be all and end all, but we live in a world which is dominated by capitalism. Money, perhaps for a lot of people, is the be all and end all. So it's. I don't think it's as straightforward as that. I think
we
genuinely. I
also
mean,
but the thing is that we also live in a society where because of social media and stuff, everybody wants to be liked. No one wants to be hated. So everyone wants to be liked and popular. So it hurts egos, and in some cases it won't be egos. It will be the fact that it genuinely just hurts the person that they don't have the adulation that they want, and they're actually getting this kind of abuse that they don't know what to like. They don't know how to handle it. Footballers, I hate to I hate to use this blanket statement, but a lot of them aren't like the sharpest tools, in the toolbox. So at least that's the perception of them.
they've got plenty
So
of advisors,
yeah, yeah.
intelligent advisors, I would presume.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. But then I know just because I know you buy the ticket, you get to say whatever you want, but that doesn't give you the license, in my opinion, to just um the way some of these players get berated. I think lines get crossed on a daily, weekly, whatever you want to say basis. Um, yeah, that's if the players had a stinker and you want to let him know about it, that's absolutely fine. Like you said, it comes with the territory. Um, but some lines can't be crossed. They can't be, and it's become almost normalized And it's not just like in Bamford's situation, but like when Saka, Sancho, Rashford missed their pennies for England. Straight away, monkeys, bananas, all
But
those
that's the line that's
emojis.
been crossed, isn't it? Because in a sense, that's
But it's
based
not.
on that's
It's
racial,
become.
as
It's
I said.
become. Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
part of
I
abuse,
have
isn't it?
no.
It's part of
Yeah, I
player
mean it's
abuse.
abuse. Yeah, that's where I would sort of say the lines will be crossed. In a sense, if it's racial or again, if you sort of say right, kill yourself. I mean, even to a certain extent, as I said. I mean, if you listen to Gary Lineker, if you look at his tweets and sometimes the responses, absolutely venomous.
Yeah,
But I think Gary Lineker is smart enough, and I think he's aware that there's lots of keyboard warriors. There's lots of cowards behind keyboards, sort of wishing all sorts of ills. But so that's how he sort of processes that these
yeah,
are cowards.
but everyone's different, aren't they? So you
But then
can't just because he processes it like that doesn't mean everyone else is going to
But
process it
then don't be on
like that.
social media. If I mean my advice to Patrick Bamford would be there's two advice pieces of advice. One, do your job. If you do your job, you don't get abused. And B, get off social media because you're so rubbish that you're going to get constantly abused. Uh, uh, and be comfortable with the 70,000. You've got a multi-million-pound house. You've got a fantastic life. So in context, you're in a decent position. This abuse on the whole, obviously, it's not nice, but it's to a certain extent self-inflicted. It's not just happened randomly. Why has it happened? Because you're rubbish. You're crap. That's why it's happening. So get yourself off social media. Do your job. If you do your job, you won't get this abuse.
The thing is, when they deactivate their socials, I am surprised sometimes because most of the time PR agencies run them anyway, so I don't see why they deactivate them. Obviously, they probably have a login to it. I've always been of the opinion where if you're a professional footballer, just have a private account and have one for your PR stuff,
Yeah,
but then have a
absolutely.
private one, and then no one can say anything to you on that. Obviously, you can see what people still say on like Twitter and stuff, but um. There's lines. It's become too normalized for people to just give abuse willy-nilly and get away with it scot-free. So, I'll come back to it anyway, but Lewis, sorry, I'll let you have the floor, buddy.
No need for apology. I'm enjoying the debate and the discussion. I do want to ask.
Just wait. Sorry, before OS, let me just send some abusive messages before you start. Go on, OS.
I just wanted to ask you the question, Ayub. You mentioned, and I asked this respectfully. You mentioned how you did not. You understand idealistically what should be the case.
Absolutely.
You also laid out quite well in terms of what is currently the environment. Let's say whether it's online or whether it's on the terraces or at football grounds or what have you. I think you laid that out very well. You also kind of ended your initial segment by suggesting that you were fine with abuse. Obviously, I can understand you mean to a certain point, of course. So where is that line in terms of what is tolerable, let's say, and what is perhaps something that's unjustified?
Performance based. If I was a professional footballer, I would have no objections. If I had a stinker and people were hurling abuse at the game that I had, the passes that I misplaced, absolutely fine. And that's where it is. I mean, as I said, I would be one where if I mean, I never at players, but if those who are atting players and then just say you've had an effing stinker, that's fine. If you sort of say, "Oh, my granny could have effing scored," that's fine, because as a professional athlete, that's your job. But I still maintain if you put in the effort and you do your job reasonably well on a regular basis, you ain't going to get abused. You're going to get abuse from random keyboard warriors who will support other sides. But certainly, what Bamford was getting was from his own fans. I mean, so I have no objections. Racial, absolutely intolerable, including members of the players' families, absolutely unacceptable. So there are lines, obviously, that some people are crossing. Myself, I would, if I'm on social media as a professional sportsman, I expect there's going to be a fair amount of abuse based on performances. As I said, at the end of the day, I know what will sort of, if I'm on social media, there's a reason why I'm on there. Why am I on there? Obviously, there's going to be times where there's tremendous amounts of adulations. I'm going to cop that up. At the end of the day, there is a flip side. And that's when I don't perform, I'm going to have to cop some abuse. Goes with the territory. But for me, Baj obviously doesn't agree. But for me, if I'm on 70, 80, 90,000 a week, I can sort of sleep easy in my palatial surroundings, and maybe ease my sort of anguish in my sort of 15 acres garden, which has been tended by 63 gardeners.
Yeah, what's the old adage? I think it was from a famous boxer. The idea that how do you wake up in the morning to train when you're kind of sleeping under silk sheets or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, really good discussion. I really enjoyed that. I do want to obviously share my views, and they are obviously my own kind of personal views, and it's just the way I see it personally. I'm going to attack it from a slightly different angle because I want to lay out some recent events and recent incidents, let's say, that's happened just for our viewers, just with a view to kind of informing, and then come on to some of the larger points, let's say, or the more kind of macro views. We've seen multiple different episodes recently of player abuse, whether that's at the football pitch, whether that's in outside of the football pitch in terms of kind of normal day-to-day settings, or whether obviously the most common phenomenon right now is on social media. We've seen incidents. We've talked about it actually on this episode. I think one of them, the Romelu Lukaku incident with the racial abuse on the football pitch. I think, Badge, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was against Juventus in one of the Italian Cup games. You saw he copped a lot of racial abuse on the pitch. I think he scored the penalty, shushed the Juventus fans, got a second yellow card and got sent home. I don't know if it was rescinded later on. I do remember vaguely something along those lines, but that's fine. We remember. Recently we had, and again, I'm just simply listing the various degrees of abuse. I'm not suggesting that I agree with one or disagree with the other. We saw recently at the Spurs Stadium a different type of abuse where, and I say abuse quote unquote, with the Davinson Sanchez situation where he was brought on as a substitute. I think it was Longley that went off injured during that game, if memory serves. He was brought on as a substitute. He was booed on by his own fans, and then when he was substituted shortly after, I think the second half, I think he'd made a mistake. He was kind of cheered off the pitch. Again, different types of abuse. I'm just simply recounting some of the recent events that I can remember. We had the Eric Dyer situation, famously evidenced on the Amazon Prime documentary, where he went into the stands. I think his brother was perhaps being attacked in the stadium at the Spurs Stadium, and he went into obviously protect his family, and obviously he was quite annoyed by that. But again, different types, different environments, different situations. Obviously, yesterday we saw some of the events in the Netherlands, I believe, with West Ham players having to kind of go into the stands to try and protect friends and family. That was obviously quite a huge. That could have got ugly very quickly. So that again, it's just to Ayub's larger point, becoming more and more common. Let's say this kind of social disorder. And obviously, recently in the Leeds game at Ellen Road, we saw the fan approach Eddie Howe on the touchline. Myself and Ayub spoke offline. That could have got ugly really quickly. I did suggest to Ayub that if in the event that supporter had cold cocked Eddie Howe and punched him, God forbid, it's difficult to know where football would be right now. I think that it was that serious an incident. If a Premier League manager was to get assaulted on the touchline by a supporter, I think all types of recriminations and kind of punishments and various different kind of fallout would have arisen from that.
Do you not remember when that happened to Jack Grealish, by the way?
Yeah, indeed. And I think that obviously there was a story recently, unfortunately, that the offender, I think, passed away. It was the Birmingham fan that obviously came on during the derby against Aston Villa and punched him. I think there was a story in the newspapers a couple of months ago, actually, that he passed away. But yeah, absolutely. That was, a fan coming onto the pitch. And we've seen a little bit of that, haven't we? We saw the Arsenal game earlier in the Spurs Stadium when the supporter came onto the kind of advertised hoardings and kicked Aaron Ramsdale. I think he was, again, they identified the culprit fairly quickly. I say all of that to also give you a little bit of details about another one that was quite famous, if I've got the time, just to cover the Ivan Toney story, which I'm sure both of you have followed. Not the recent story about him obviously being banned for betting charges, but the one where last year, 14th of October,
Hmm.
2022, he scored 2 goals, Brighton against Brentford. He scored 2 goals to deliver a victory for Brentford. And he was racially abused on Instagram by a gentleman, a Newcastle supporter, actually. He then reported that abuse to police. Police then obviously investigated the incident and found the gentleman in Blyth and therefore arrested him. And thereafterwards, obviously, there was a whole case, and the gentleman in question was banned from attending all football matches in the UK, as well as England internationals, friendlies, and major tournaments. And he was also obviously banned from all kind of Premier League grounds and all grounds in the UK. But he was also given a 4-month suspended sentence. And this was quite a landmark ruling in the case. I think it was one of the first ones passed in the recent act passed in 2022. And the police made quite a distinction in that case. What they said was, because he was a Newcastle fan and he'd made some racist comments on social media, they actually didn't directly link it to football, let's say, because we've seen a lot of supporters being banned from football stadiums and what have you by uttering, let's say, racist or other types of abuse online. But it was the fact that he was a Newcastle supporter subjecting or commenting on another game. So they made this slight detachment, which I think slightly increased the severity of it. I'm not sure whether that sticks. I think racial abuse is racial abuse, whether you support one of the teams, whether you've got some impact or correlation to the game itself. It is what it is. So he received a suspended sentence. So that's to say, I think are social media companies doing enough to police and to help monitor and kind of, try and water down some of that abuse? I would argue there's much more work to be done in that regard. The question is, and this is where I want to comment to slightly the larger point, where is this all coming from? What is this? One of the things that I'm incredibly grateful for, and again, these are my personal views. One of the aspects that I'm incredibly grateful for, at least in my life, is one, faith, one, friends, family, the love of friends and family. And the other is, and I think about this all the time, is the fact that as best as possible, I've been given a conscience. And that conscience allows me to educate myself in terms of what is the difference between right and wrong. That's not to say I don't make mistakes. I make loads of them every single day. But it's the understanding of what is consistent with the values of what our parents brought us up with, what you can and what you cannot say, what you can and cannot do, and the fact that your utterances and that the tongue and our words have a deep impact. So we've got to be very mindful about how we use it. Now, this is not a religious podcast, but ultimately we're not allowed to lie, abuse, slander, backbite, and what have you. And similar other holy books say something similar about how one should safeguard their tongue. And again, I say all that to say, when I'm at a Blackburn Rovers game, and again, personal experiences, when I'm at a Blackburn Rovers game and I'm sat there and I see Sam Vokes as a substitute for another club warming up, and I see Blackburn Rovers fans break out into the "Your mum's your dad, your dad's your mum" song, and I won't finish off the rest of the lyrics. Now, some may say that's par for the course. That's fine. But the question I ask is, well, you've got children singing it, you've got children within earshot. I mean, is that really the right thing? My heart actually despairs. When I watch the Amazon Prime documentary, watching Leeds, when they covered the Leeds Aston Villa controversy, when Leeds Matthias Cligg scored that goal when one of the Aston Villa players was lying horizontal on the halfway line, and he scores the goal. They didn't kick the ball out of play, one that Ayub remembers all too well, unfortunately. And then obviously Marcelo Bielsa, whether you agree or disagree with his actions, tells Aston Villa obviously that, okay, fine, you run through and you score the goal, and Pontus Jansson did his best to try and stop that. I mean, when you see on the Amazon Prime documentary, it cut to the fans and you've got adults as well as children singing "What the F is going on." Again, that for me just resonates, because ultimately, if you're not condemning it, you're condoning it. And some may say, listen, that's par for the course, but for me, it's quite distasteful to see that coming out of children's mouth. Again, personal view only. I believe player abuse comes from, and this is where I'll come on to your point, so in my opinion, there are two reasons why player abuse is representative of two aspects, and both of you have made great points to this. One is that it alludes to the entitlement of supporters in the sense that they believe that by merely adopting a club, and you adopt that club, regardless of what romantics or romantics may think about the club chooses you, you choose that club. Sport is ultimately entertainment, and the most important protagonists in any sport are the players. And if it's a combat sport, it's the fighters. And sometimes fans create the business, they create the marketing audience and what have you, but the protagonists create the sport. And I think fans sometimes overstate their importance. And like I said, coming on to the first point, it's the entitlement that some fans feel that by merely adopting a club, it gives them a right to articulate views, whether it be in public from the terraces or whether online, that are at best distasteful or at worst case scenario quite abhorrent and quite disgusting, if you ask me. It's the idea that if I'm paying my TV subscription for Sky Sports or BT Sport or various other kind of forums where I have to access my Premier League rights, Amazon, it's as if, well, and again, paying match day tickets and season tickets and what have you, memberships. It's the idea that, well, I've paid my good money, I can say whatever I want. And I go back to the idea, you have a conscience. What you say is representative of who you are. And ultimately, the second reason that I believe, and this is the one of you that I think was your overarching point, is that it's simply just this continuous erosion of what I see as kind of good moral values, good decency, dignity in terms of how we conduct ourselves. And yes, the media plays a part in that in terms of how we are all, let's say, you mentioned about the average reading age and what have you. I get that. We are then perhaps, it's kind of a cause and effect type thing. But ultimately, I think we need to strive to be better. And to Badge's point, whether the support, and this is where I disagree with you, whether that player gets 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, he's a human being. And you have, as a supporter, no rights over that player whatsoever. If you were eating at a restaurant and you might say, well, it's my club. Well, it's not your club. You can choose to support that club if you want, or you can choose to do something else. You wouldn't be in a restaurant and just simply shout over tables saying, oh, effing this and effing that. And it's a poor analogy, but the point I'm making is that person is just a stranger. You choose to support that club. It doesn't mean you have to give them their 100% support or your 100% support. It just means that common decency says that you have no rights in terms of being able to speak to someone in that way that you don't know in that personal way, who's not done actually anything against you personally. So again, just to kind of summarize, I find it quite distasteful when I hear any type of abuse. Yes, for sure, some of the stuff that goes from a personal level, but even when people use profanities, especially children, and again, I don't want to come across as holier than thou, but I take that very, very seriously because that's not the type of upbringing that I was used to. And that's not something that I would want for all of our children. So that's kind of where I am. I don't see it getting any easier. But again, I find it very uncomfortable when I hear any type of abuse. And I mean any type of abuse towards footballers, managers, or any other kind of sporting protagonists.
No, I honestly wholeheartedly agree with quite a lot of your points there. I do think I think the thing that works against what you're saying is, as a footballer, if you got to accept you're in the limelight, you're almost celebrity at this point, especially if you're playing for top clubs. So it comes with the territory. You cannot do anything about it. It doesn't matter if you're a sports, if it doesn't matter if you're an athlete, it doesn't matter if you're an actor, musician, whatever. It comes with the territory. If you're in the limelight, if you're in the spotlight, you put on this pedestal where people are gonna look at you, and if you place a step wrong, they're gonna come for you, basically. So I don't. It comes with the territory, unfortunately. I do think there is, like, if someone is performing badly and you want to mourn about it, that's fine. That's fine. But if you're crossing lines, threatening, like that's the whole reason he deactivated his socials. His family's getting threatened. He's getting threatened. it's like that kind of stuff is ludicrous. And the problem with social media is it gives clowns like that ammunition to say whatever they want. It's a free platform and it'll get seen. And then you'll have other idiots. Well, I'm allowed to say that, right? Apologies if I'm not. But it'll have other idiots who then like that and then jump on that wagon as well. So it's unfortunate, but I do feel like you can voice your opinion. I mean, in some ways, you do have to just accept that you are going to get some form of abuse. I remember there was a time, and this is not to like make me look better or anything as such, but I think it's touching on the point that you brought up, Lewis. There were some when I was, it must have, I can't remember how many years ago it was, but I had some tweets where I think I just had enough of Andreas Pereira and Phil Jones at separate occasions, and I put up some tweets like mocking them, but I wasn't. There was no like effing, effing this, effing that. It was just more so I was mocking them because I was sick of them. And then like years later, like obviously Phil Jones disappeared for years because of injury and stuff. And then you hear about what Phil Jones has been going through. He's been getting paid the whole time. That doesn't stop the fact that he's in a super dark place because he's constantly injured. He can't get back to the thing he loves. And that has a mental toll on a guy in itself, and the effect it was having on him. So I went back to my Twitter and I searched for those tweets, and I was like, even though this tweet didn't really have that much, it didn't really have malice or anything, but I was like, if he miraculously somehow comes across this and reads it, and he's already in that place, I'm like, that must be such a horrific feeling, like honestly. So I quickly like just made sure I got rid of any of that. This was quite a few years ago, mind, but it put it into perspective because for us, we treat them like robots, that they're footballers. Nothing can really hurt them, even if we can say our piece. Like I said, it wasn't even anything that malicious. To be honest, it was just more so I was just sick of them, and I was just taking the mick. But them reading that, I mean, it has a adverse effect on them clearly. And now, if you're in your place of work and your boss has told you you're doing an awful job, you're gonna you're not gonna react to that in a positive way. You're gonna take it to heart immediately. And I imagine that times thousands and thousands, and with some clubs millions of fans piling on. Like it's a toxic environment to be in. Like I said, some of it comes with the territory, but social media allows too many spanners to just really like come out with all sorts of rubbish that they know that they can get away with because there's no way of policing that on the whole. Referee, I do find myself giving abuse to refs at games. Like I'll openly admit to that. Uh, I think more so my frustrations with the referees are, I'm not saying it's okay, but there's no accountability for them. And there's zero accountability for them. Like if a player plays bad, like they can get dropped. Fans obviously let them know how it is, whether it's their own fans, other fans. Refs just get away scot-free. Like if you were to ask fans now and show them pictures of Premier League referees, they probably couldn't name half, but they could tell you that he's made this awful decision. They've made this many awful decisions. And it happens on the weekly. So for them, like I am, admittedly, when I go to games, you always hear the F off ref and all that kind of stuff. Uh, Not to condone it, but I feel like that's why they get it because they have zero accountability. But without straying off the point too much, I just think it's bang out of order at times. I think some of it when players get booed, like if a player's had a string of bad performances and they get subbed and that player gets booed by the home crowd, I I don't think anything annoys me more, honest to God. And I know they can say what they want, they've paid for their ticket, whatnot, but like, come on, man, like you can't do that. Like I remember it happened to Granit Xhaka at Arsenal. That was shocking. The I'm like, yeah, okay, if he's not playing well, fine. it's up to the manager. He can take him out at any point. If the manager persists with him and he's in bad form, like what are you expecting? And the abuse he got was criminal. I think that's when everyone thought his days were numbered, and he retaliated. He actually retaliated to it.
Yeah, the slightly, and I say funny because you can smile at it now that it's become a nice story for both Arsenal and the player.
Yeah.
Is that he actually took his time coming off the pitch,
Yeah.
which is why it's just this amazing theatre of like the fans all booing him, which absolutely is wrong, and then he's kind of cupping his ears and obviously stormed down the tunnel. But what I mean is just this kind of, I mean, this funny little kind of situation where he's not backing down as well. So it's just
He's from the street. I'm pretty sure he's from the streets of Kosovo as well. So I don't think people booing him would affect him the same way.
That's the least of his worries. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But from a United standpoint, I remember this happened to Harry Maguire, and I am not a Harry Maguire fan in any way, shape, or form. But he got substituted off, and he came off to enormous boos at Old Trafford, and I'm like, for me, that's bang out of order. Like, I don't believe that this should be subjected to that. Like, yeah, I get it, and trust me, like I'm reiterating again, I am no fan of Harry Maguire. But I just think that's so out of order and just
but what do you
man.
Just on this point? I mean, Sky Sports are instrumental because remember when they are advertising a big game, they ratchet up the emotion. I mean, this tribalism in other sports as well, UFC, constant barrage of sort of bigging up the fight, and it very much, I suppose, creates this sort of passion within, especially with football. Football is the most popular sport in the world. TV companies are very smart. At the end of the day, they know what they're doing. So when you see the adverts, the promotions, the sound bites, the clickbaits, it's all for a reason to ratchet up people's emotions. You have that, and then when you think about the masses on the whole that support football, perhaps in the UK are part of that average reading age of 9. This is what I'm saying. This is why perhaps if you've got that group, if you're somebody that perhaps is so passionate about your football team, you've got a player that is letting you down week in, week out. How do you release your frustrations? If you're not somebody who can process, think about, right, what is the impact that my actions will have if I'm constantly booing and sort of barracking a player? What's the impact it's going to have? You've not got the capacity as a fan. All you're thinking is, this guy's letting me down week in, week out. He's missed the penalty. We're going to get relegated. What do you expect them to do?
Yeah, but at the same time, it doesn't give them the right to say whatever the hell, whatever.
No, but again,
the
question is, you've got to have the capacity, the intellectual capacity to process that. Now, I absolutely am irate with Patrick Bamford. I've sent many tweets, but never at any of the Leeds United players. But if I was in the ground, I would be booing Patrick Bamford if he was coming off. And I don't think you can equate that with just normal work. I mean, no.
I did equate to that. I did allude to that. Sorry, in the sense that they are like celebrities. You treat them as if they are robots and not not just regular humans that have somehow broken.
Regular humans don't get 100,000 a week. Regular humans.
No. Yeah. Listen, they are regular humans. They just happen to be more skilled at playing football,
which means they're not regular humans. Regular humans are exceptional athletes. To be an exceptional athlete, I wouldn't sort of say you're subhuman. You're a different species, but you're pretty close to being a different species. I'm, as I said, my position is, if we were living in a world which was, or at least a society which was extremely intelligent, it was considerate, it was caring, it would be different, because that's the framework that we're operating within. In the UK, it isn't. And I would sort of say that the media, or everybody who perhaps creates the monsters that many people become, are responsible for then the I suppose, the actions. You can't suddenly, Sky can't turn around and say, how dare these people criticize Patrick Bamford? All they need to look at is what they do to create these monsters. They create, I suppose, rival factions, tribes. So they're accountable. But in just going back onto the point about abuse, as I said, I don't mind booing. If somebody is paid an incredibly high salary to perform, if they're not doing the job week in, week out, the fan that is paid to get in has every right to boo. There is a line, obviously, they shouldn't cross, but they can boo him.
Right, we got to wrap this topic up. But Lewis, if you got a final point, go for it.
I'll try and be quick. Give me 60 seconds.
No. Hey, yeah. Hurry up.
60 seconds. You blaze it out really well in terms of the.
Oh, Badger's gone. He's had enough.
He's had enough.
He's gone to abuse somebody.
No, but you lay out really well in terms of how the marketing works, and then obviously we're consumers of said product, or well, I say the general we, and then ultimately that's what you create, right? This kind of this pent up emotion, because sport, that's the great thing. It evokes certain emotions in us, in all of us, right? Whether we show it externally or internally, it does evoke something. It stirs some emotion inside. And to your point, ultimately, what the majority and the masses will react to is this kind of this tribalism, and then kind of these utterances, and without having this kind of moral filter about what we can and cannot utter. I agree with you. It's only a downward spiral from here on in. Unfortunately, I think the only way we can get better at this is, again, this kind of education and understanding of values and what's right and what's wrong. I agree with you. We're so far away from that. I don't see it improving anytime soon. And the last point I'll just very, very quickly make is it's symptomatic of the fact that the Premier League, sorry, Badge, it's symptomatic of the fact, let's be very clear, we have a cost of living crisis. This doesn't condone it. It's merely an explanation of what's occurring here in front of our very eyes. You have a cost of living crisis where people are struggling to meet payments for gas and electric, council tax, various different degree mortgage payments going up because of the interest rates, all the rest of it, trying to just simply put food on the table for themselves and their kids to keep their homes warm over the winter. And then on the other hand, they're viewing this product where the Premier League, in terms of the salaries, are just going up. And so there's this huge divide. So it creates this kind of internal frustration or distance between how you see life and perhaps how footballers see life. And there's often this kind of complaint towards footballers, often with baseless accusations of, oh, they don't really care, he's happy on his kind of 150, 200, 300k a week. So I think, to your point, this divide's only getting kind of wider and wider, and I don't see how that gap shortens to have a greater understanding of what is right and wrong when we come to having any abuse towards football players.
Yeah, I find it funny when, especially working class fans, I love to point out the fact that footballers earn hundreds and thousands, but then you had working class towns in the last election fought blue. But I guess that speaks to the 9-year-old reading age. Anyways, we are moving on, lads. We're gonna have quick thoughts. We're gonna have quick thoughts on the games at the top of the table. Sorry, Ayub. What stands out to you this weekend, guys, from either title race, top four, whichever?
I'll let you go first, Hugh.
No, I'll let you go, Lewis. My interest is more at the bottom, so I've not got too many views on the top. I'm more concerned about what's going to happen at the weekend.
Well, it's Friday evening, so there's another 9 days left in the Premier League potentially for Ayub Patel. The countdown is on. I think for me, Badge, what I would say, I think the top four race. I mean, of course, the relegation battle. I'll let you perhaps cover that. But in terms of the top four race, I think that was really interesting. Perhaps up until yesterday's result with an amazing, a really good victory for Newcastle at home to Brighton. I actually felt just before that, when Liverpool beat Leicester on Monday 3-0, I genuinely felt it was 3-0, right? Yeah, it was 3-0. I genuinely felt actually that Liverpool missed an opportunity, because they really needed to close that goal difference between Leicester. And I'm not talking about trying to close the goal difference from the start of the game, but once you've got the game in the bag, I really thought they squandered a lot of open opportunities. I don't mean kind of chances, but kind of these 3-on-2s, 3-on-3s, 4-on-3s, and playing the wrong passes. And they really needed to close that gap to another, let's say, +1, +2 goal difference if they could. They were obviously +4 4, I think it was, or -4 from a Liverpool perspective to Newcastle. And I always felt for Liverpool, it was Newcastle who they had to chase, simply because I think Manchester United's fixtures, although they're 4th right now, and Newcastle obviously won yesterday with a great victory, I always felt Newcastle were the team that Liverpool could perhaps catch. Why? They had Brighton at home, Chelsea on the last game of the season. I just felt there was enough there. But because they hadn't scored enough goals against Leicester, and I say enough, they beat them 3-0. Even then, I felt that Newcastle would have pipped them, Liverpool, on goal difference, and that's if Liverpool win out. So, from my perspective, I think the top 4. I mean, a lot of United fans probably feel a bit uneasy, Badger. I'm sure you'll cover it, but I think they'll be absolutely fine. I think they've got good fixtures away to Bournemouth, home to Chelsea, finishing off home to Fulham. For me, I could see them winning out, if not worst case scenario, getting 7 points. Of course, if they drop points over the weekend, that does put pressure on the Chelsea game, depending on the Liverpool-Aston Villa result, given that you have clearly an inferior goal difference to Liverpool. So I think from a United perspective, they've got, I think, Rashford back. I think they've got another player back from injury. You'll probably be able to tell me, but I did read it as a second returnee as well. So I think they'll be okay against Bournemouth. But again, that'll probably be the game that I think most observers will just keep an eye out for, in terms of, if they drop points there, just puts a bit of pressure home to Chelsea. And regardless of Chelsea's form, they're still, they're still a big club. And at Old Trafford, you'll feel confident, but I think there'll be a little bit of nervousness, especially if Liverpool turn over Villa. So probably United, Bournemouth, I'll probably keep an eye on that. I think Newcastle will be fine. Home to Leicester, they only need 3 points to secure Champions League football. I think they'll get that on Monday.
Yeah, I'm not so confident that top 4 is done. We are currently 5th in the we're 5th in the away table, shall we say, in the Premier League this season. Even though we've only got, I think, 1 point against the top 9, so we must have maxed out on the other end. But I do expect us to beat Bournemouth. But I'm not sure if Rashford had a setback today or not. I'm not entirely sure about that, because he is the main source for goals. Because when he doesn't play, our next top scorers are on like 5 and 4s, which is just unacceptable. But for this season, it is what it is. And again, for Bournemouth, it's their last game of the season at home in front of their fans, so they'll probably want to put on a good showing. So it's a tricky one. I do believe if we win tomorrow, then we'll win one of the last 2 home games to wrap up 4th. Villa, tough game for Liverpool, but given they're at home, I do expect them, in the form that they're in, to eke out a win there. I think it may be a high-scoring game, either 2-3, maybe look at 3-2. Because I think both teams have goals in them. Liverpool still concede, but they can outscore opponents. Their forwards are firing at the moment. Premier League title's done, so I won't even bother touching on that. And I believe that they're the 2 key games for me. I think Newcastle will, if they play anything like they've been playing lately, they should obliterate Leicester. And sorry if you're a Leicester fan. But...
So just before Ayub goes, Badge, if that's the only game that you've got a keen interest on, you must think that the bottom 3 is decided then. You can continue.
Yeah, the
right,
darkness
on the
is
bottom.
seeping
I'm not
in.
I'm not going to talk about the top. You don't want me to talk about the top, yeah? The result yesterday for West Ham, that was a massive result, because I was hoping that they would win. I was hoping it would be extra time, so they were tied. There was a little bit of shenanigans after the game, so maybe they were even stressed about that as well. So, but the game's tomorrow, that will define. I think the key for me is Everton. I think they're safe. Could be famous last words, and it could be a short again. But Everton, I think, are safe. It's Forest. That's the key. I have to. I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking that Forest have to lose tomorrow. We win on Sunday. That really is the only 2 games that I'm thinking about at the moment. So
wait,
Forest,
who do you have?
West Ham on Sunday.
West Ham. Oh, sorry, of course.
Yeah. So tomorrow the game, it's Forest at home to the Arsenal. It's which Arsenal's going to turn up. Is it an Arsenal which is resigned to the fact that they're second, or are they going to still think, well, clutching at straws? Mathematically, it's still possible. I just hope they put up a show. If Forest get a point or get a win, God forbid, then it's curtains. Then it's absolute curtains. So that's the only thing that's on my mind at this moment in time. I'm not concerned about what's happening at top four. I'm just concerned about the Forest result. So tomorrow, my mind is just purely on Forest. Everton, they'll win against Wolves. I can't see them not winning. Baz, you're right. I think Leicester playing Newcastle. If Newcastle sort of even half play like they did, they should win. And I think with Leicester, it seems, I think the last result was the final nail in the coffin. They looked defeated. They looked as if they've accepted the inevitable. So I think Leicester definitely down. It's between, in my mind, I think Forest and Leeds.
Well, I wouldn't rule Everton out just yet. They're there for a reason. So they could still be in that mix. I think for Forest, if they beat Arsenal or get a draw, I think some stern words should be had on the next one with Uwais Ahmed.
And I'll probably be quite abusive on Twitter as well.
The only thing I would say about Leicester is, Bad, you'll have to check this on the table, but I think Leicester, have the.
Wait, let me ask Tekka.
I think they have the best goal difference out of the teams at the bottom. I think,
They do.
and although I expect them to lose on Monday and lose fairly convincingly, I think they've got still enough margin for error compared to Leeds, Everton, and Nottingham Forest, which means that depending on the results, if Everton, I think, who are playing Wolves, correct me if I'm mistaken, at Molineux, if the results, let's say if Wolves win, and let's say Arsenal beat Forest, which let's see. And let's say Leeds were to lose, I just wonder whether Leicester, obviously, I'm not saying it's not a free hit. Of course, it's not. It's game week 37, but they'll then think, well, hang on, they play on Monday after everyone's played, so that's, that is what it is. But I think they've got that last game home to West Ham, and then you've really got to question, okay, well, what type of West Ham? They'll have played their last home game against Leeds. What kind of West Ham travels to Leicester? Again, that doesn't mean anything, right? A desperate Leicester.
Oh, it does. It does. I mean, I think West Ham, that last game, that's a
but it can work.
That's a freebie. That's a freebie. They'll win that game.
Who'll win that game?
Leicester.
Yeah, but it works both ways. Leicester will have all the pressure in front of their fans who've been booing them off the pitch recently. And West Ham will be like, we're playing without any pressure whatsoever. Let's just go out and play football. And that sometimes goes the other way, I feel, as well.
Well, they've got an important cup game, I think. I don't know whether it's a week after. First cup game in 40-odd years for West Ham. So they're not going to be risking any of the big players. So even the players that perhaps are fringe players, if they think that they might have a chance of playing in the cup final, they'll be taking it easy. So I think that if they can get anything out of the game again,
I thought you said Moyes and Big Sam were friends. So
no, that's between that's our game on Sunday. I'm hoping, honestly, I hope phone calls have been had. Moyes is sort of, common sense sort of tells me that Moyes is only concerned about the cup final now, because he would be a legendary figure at West Ham, because it's a club that's not won anything for 40-odd years. Me and Badge always talk about pots. This is a great opportunity for West Ham. So anybody with a bit of common sense, you'd be rested. In fact, put the kids out. In fact, Moisey, put your kids on, lad.
The games are not mutually exclusive. They can beat Leeds on Sunday. They can beat Leicester on the last game of the season, and they can winning the Europa Conference League.
No, I think Ayub does have a point, though. I do think players will be arrested for that.
Yeah, but I just wonder how Moyes will approach it. Remember, he's a very much he's a traditionalist, right?
He'll rotate.
He'll understand what the expectation is from a league perspective. I think there's just
forget where they're going to go.
Where they're going to go?
This man, Moyes.
No, I just think there's an understanding that you've got to be. There's a certain integrity, and I think when you're playing against a team that's fighting, you can't just put your kids out. I think he might be balanced. He'll rotate a little, but I think on that last game of the season, he'll look at it as though, well, he owes a duty of care to the Premier League to at least put a reputable team out.
Absolutely not. Absolutely, he could care less. He could not care less.
Let's see.
I'd be surprised. I think it'd be a bad decision if you did. But anyways, guys, we are going to wrap that up. Thanks for joining, Ayub, Uwais. Remember, guys, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Hit the bell for notification for our next video, whenever that may be. And I was going to say something I've completely forgotten. What am I missing, guys?
Well, we'll be hoping. We'll be hoping
straight on offside.
Well done for remembering the outro. But no, we'll be looking to record hopefully Monday. Episode should drop on Tuesday with the weekend's events. Who knows? Maybe certain clubs' fate may well have already been decided. So let's see.
I think
I'll be getting a load of abuse. I don't mind. Bring it on. Bring it on.
But anyways, guys, until we join you on the next one, remember, don't stray.